Hello, my name's Robert Dean Steele, and I am here today to have a little chat with you. Now, this is our second video concerning basically common sense. And I really wanted to spend some time with you. One of my favorite historical characters is a guy named Ben Franklin. Now, of course, Ben Franklin was well known around the revolution of the American independence, and then, of course, later on became an ambassador. But he was a very well-known inventor, philanthropist, basically a well-known individual in American history. Now, I'm not an American, but there are some things that I find in his life that were really fascinating. Part of Ben Franklin's identity were 13 principles that he put into his life, and that's what I want to share with you over the next 13 videos on our common sense. You know, we need to have a blueprint of life. We need to know where we're going. We need to have a compass. Now, of course, me being who I am and my belief system of God, I also believe that blueprint system is the Bible. But there are some wonderful principles that we can learn from men like Ben Franklin. And so what I want to share with you today is his first principle. He calls it temperance. Now, I looked up in the dictionary what it actually meant. The Webster's Dictionary says moderation in action, thought, and feeling. It basically means self-control. And that's so very, very important in every aspect of life. Some people call it restraint. It is knowing when to talk and when not to talk. You know, Solomon said this. He said, people will think that you are wise until you open your mouth, and all of a sudden they will know that you're not that wise. James, who is a writer in the Bible, put it this way. He says, be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Now, also as well, the Webster's Dictionary says moderation in appetites, passion. So basically, you are taking more of a middle ground. You're not this wingnut way off in the corner, and you're not this, this slow but steady kind of guy. You are somewhere in the middle. Now, that's basically where most people are when it comes to their lives. There are, of course, in the left and right political spectrum and also cultural spectrum, the activists, the people who go ultra left or ultra right. But most of us, about 80% of us, maybe even 85% of us, find ourselves in the middle. We like moderation. We like restraint. We try to practice that because we know that that is actually a wonderful way to interact with people. When you are interacting with people, when you are moderate, that means you're trying to listen to what they have to say. Now, I'm going to come back to James. James says in James chapter 1, verse number 19 of James, he says, first of all, be quick to hear. Now, when you are trying to listen to what people say. Now, a little aside here, 80% of all communication has to do with the ability to be able to listen, to actually hear what they're saying. When I was involved in especially broadcasting, and we were looking at the philosophy behind broadcasting and in particular interviewing, what you need to do is you need to ask probing questions. And when you don't understand, what you need to do is then ask a question that will basically help you and the person you're interviewing or talking to listen. Okay, you'll know what they're having to say. You know, there are many times where I'll be talking to someone and I say, is this what you mean? And then they clarify it, and I'm going, thank you so very much for that. I appreciate that because that really helps me. That is listening. And then it says slow to anger. So often we come across people who have a differing opinion. And one of the ways what we're going to gain respect for them is we're not always going to agree. And we need to understand that people have different opinions. It's a thing called autonomy. And we in the Western world have valued a thing called, of course, free speech. That means that we are allowed to speak our opinions, whether people agree with it or not. Some people have extreme opinions, and you're going, wait a minute, I don't understand that. But out of respect for them, you are going to listen to it, unless, of course, it's so bizarre, you're going to may even say, hey, that's kind of bizarre. But when you listen to someone and you're slow to speak, one of the biggest areas of communication is not trying to talk over somebody. I know that can often happen. I've seen it happen on TV programs like The View or some of these other where they're yelling at each other and they're trying to get their opinion across and they're calling each other names, and you don't win arguments and you don't have viable discussions when you're doing. That's why you need to practice temperance. Another way of looking at temperance, of course, is being self-controlled. Now, I love what it says in, I'm just thinking here, 2 Timothy 1:7. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and of a sound mind, or self-control. When you realize that you're walking in love, that love actually gives you power in discussions because you have confidence in your opinion, but also as well, you formulated your opinion, you've thought it through what you're talking about, but more importantly, you are acting out of self-control. It doesn't matter what the other person does to you. You're not going to do that. You're not going to drop down to a level. And believe me, there are people out there who want to bring you down to that level. They'll try to attack you. They'll try to attack your self-esteem. They'll try to obliterate your opinion because they want to win at all costs. You're not in there to win at all costs. You're not in a wrestling match. You're not Hulk Hogan. You're not some, Rambo type. You're trying to get your opinion, and that's what self-control is all about. Ben Franklin said, practice some self-control. Now, also as well, it means abstinence. Now, abstinence means basically you don't engage in the activity. Very, very important. Now, here's some simple thoughts when it comes to common sense. Common sense says that if you don't want to be involved with cigarettes or become addicted to cigarettes, you don't do it. If you don't want to have a DUI, or if you don't want to be caught with drunk driving, you don't drink. And the best way not to become an alcoholic is not to drink. It's common sense. Some people say, well, you can't stop people from doing that. Yes, you can. You can practice a little abstinence, a little self-control. If you do that, it's amazing what can happen. Temperance is a really wonderful word, and we need to use it. It's called self-control. Also as well, temperance means being wise and learning to control yourself. Now, here's a little thoughts here. I've just got a couple of thoughts here concerning when you are in a heated argument. Number one, take a simple breath. Take back. I was watching a video by Jordan Peterson when he was discussing with Kathy Newman, and they were getting quite heated, and she was attacking him, and he took a relaxed position. But also as well, what Jordan did in that interview was he simply listened to what she had to say and only tried to answer one question at a time. You see, what happens is when you get into a discussion with someone and it gets heated, the first thing they start doing is bringing in all this stuff into the discussion. I call it the front loader, where all of a sudden they bring a whole bunch of stuff and you're going, whoa, slow down. Let's deal one issue at a time. I want to answer that question. I want to be able to discuss that question with you. Let's take a break for just a moment. And that's really important. Or taking a moment to think. You don't have to jump into every discussion. You don't have to bring your opinion on every discussion. Take a moment and think. That is so very, very moment. Take a moment. Think about what you're going to say. Think about the intention of what you're going to say. Think about the person that you're talking to. Do you value them? Well, when you take that moment, what you're doing is you're not going to jump in and say something that you're going to regret later. Carefully frame your answer. Also, as well, when you do that and take that moment, or even take that moment when it comes to action, you can avoid so many problems. Think before you act. Think before you talk. Think before you do something. And that's called self-control or temperance. Also, as well, when you, temperance or self-control also means not taking offense. It is very easy, especially if you're in a heated discussion or you're in a heightened situation, to take offense. It's easy to attack the person. It's easy to attack their character or some part of their life. It's a lot more difficult to act restraint. We all get offended in life. But when you choose not to get offended, when you choose to take that moment and say, you know what, I'm going to forgive. No matter what you do to me, I'm not going to do to you. That's called the golden rule. That's found in Matthew chapter 5. No matter what you do to me, I will not do the same to you. I am choosing to walk with self-restraint. I am choosing today to not do that. And when you do that, you know what happens? You begin to look past the immediate, and you begin to get the big picture. Remember, the person that's bringing whatever it is, that information, they think it's important to them. It is important to them, and you're not going to devalue them when you remember the big picture. You remember why you're there. You remember why you're having that discussion. You're trying to get your point across. But it doesn't matter if you always agree. There are times that you can disagree and still have respect for each other. And that is practicing self-control. In situations when you act in self-control, it de-escalates the situation. Let me share a little story from my life. When I was about 19 years old, I had just spent several months working on my car over the summer. And then I was driving down 116th Street in Edmonton, Alberta, and this car pulls in front of me, and I smash into it. Well, he comes flying out of the car saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" Now, I could have easily come back at him. And remember, there's cause and effects, there's reaction and action. So instead, I came out and I said, "Wow, that is something. Look at your car. Look at my car." I said, "We met by accident." And immediately, it was de-escalated because I used humor in that moment. Yeah, my car was broken. His car was broken. He was angry, and I could have been angry, but because of the fact that I recognized that, it's his fault, etc., etc., I could have said that to him, but I said, "Man, we met by accident." And all of a sudden he looked at me and went, "You're right, we did." And it de-escalated. And often what we need to do is we need to use humor. We need to deflect take it, make sure that you don't attack the person. There's a real wonderful thing that I learned years ago called the 1-minute manager, and it's called the 1-minute rebuke. The 1-minute rebuke is that you deal with what the person did, not who they are. Never attack the person's character. Never attack their look. Never attack who they are. Deal with what they did. It's a great tool for child rearing as well. When you act in moderation, you're teaching your kids moderation. This is a great thought from mom and dad. Mom and dad, when you're dealing with your kids, remember, never attack who they are or what they are going to become. Remember, always deal with the incident, whatever it may be. And also remember a little thing here when it comes to raising kids, and that is this, that you always remember two things. Is it willful defiance or is it childish irresponsibility? You got to remember that as well. And that's part of self-control. And we parents teach our kids that self-control. When we take that moment, instead of blowing up and attacking the kid and hitting the kid, that shows them that we respect them, that we're doing self-control. When you take that moment and you're looking at the mess and you're looking at them not doing what you've asked them to do, and you step back for a moment and keep the big picture involved, that is walking in self-respect. Also, refusing to be drawn into foolish and meaningless arguments. When you're having a discussion with someone, and most of what we do is in discussions and having talks with people, and we need to interact with people. And always when you're interacting with people, remember there's always a possibility there's going to be a disagreement. Always remember there's a possibility that you're going to be drawn into an argument and you just refuse to go there. Just don't go there. Be self-controlled. You see, when you walk in love, then you have power over that situation and you walk with self-control. It was something that Ben Franklin talked about. I know I gave you all kinds of scenarios and all kinds of things to think about today, but I want you to remember, it's common sense. Common sense says, you know what? No matter what you do to me, I'm not going to do the same to you. I'm going to walk in temperance. I'm going to walk in self-control. I'm going to walk in moderation. I am going to live a life that is pleasing to God, pleasing to me, and pleasing to others. Jesus was basically this way. He had favor with God and man, and Jesus practiced self-control. You can practice it as well when you walk with common sense and you follow that simple thought that Ben Franklin talked about. These were the things that governed his life, and they could be things that could help you govern your life. My name is Robert Dean Steele. This is Common Sense.